My favorite is when someone thinks they muted themselves, but they accidentally or like unmuted themselves, and then they start having, yeah, exactly, the meatloaf.
All right, my friends, welcome back to another episode of this unnamed series that I think I'm calling Lessons with the Experts. That's what we're going with until further notice. Today's friend is a very special guy that I've met. I mean, I don't even know at this point, maybe 6 months ago, something like that. Mm-hmm. We met through business. We talked, we did some stuff. Now we do some business together, and hush, hush, we can't tell you all about that.
Business in the front and party in the back.
No, I'm kidding. But before I introduce you, Dr. Michael Housman, say hi so the camera goes over to you. Give the crowd an idea of who you are.
There you go. Hi, everyone. Here I am.
All right. Let me introduce this man so you all know who we're talking to today about communication. We're going to be in the communication category, course, whatever you want to call it. I think it's going to be a really, really awesome, insightful, that's the word I was looking for, insightful lesson, lecture, whatever you want to call this, on a really important topic that I think just stems into every aspect of our lives. We'll focus this around kind of business, entrepreneurship, but if you're a good communicator, I mean, your relationships are improved, your friendships, your family, your business, everything benefits from being a better communicator. So that being said, Dr. Michael Housman. I don't say doctor enough when I say hi to you, so I'll start calling you doc.
That's all good.
A Harvard and Wharton-trained AI expert, keynote speaker, and #1 best-selling author of Future Proof.
Wow. Transform
your business with AI or get left behind. I'll pop it up on the screen when I edit this. You're the founder and CEO of AI Performance Lab, where you help organizations move beyond AI hype and actually integrate human and machine intelligence into the way their teams work. Over the last 17 years, you've built AI and machine learning systems for startups and Fortune 500 companies across hiring, fraud detection, lending, real estate, and enterprise transformation.
That's a lot, right?
And a huge part of what your work focuses on is really helping leaders stop asking, what is AI? I mean, it's 2026. Come on, guys. And start asking, how do we make this really part of how we operate and integrate that within? So, fun fact, you went to school with Kim Kardashian, apparently, which, by the way, speaking of AI, I let ChatGPT write this line. So forgive me for the lame joke here. So you went to school with Kim Kardashian, which means somewhere in the multiverse, there's a reality show called Keeping Up with the Algorithms.
All right. Not bad. Not bad. Yeah.
I was completely going to scrap that line, but then I'm like, you know what? You're an AI guy. I figured I'd leave the AI joke.
Yeah, and it's not bad. I like to tell folks that somewhere she's giving a podcast and she's talking about how she went to school with me. I don't think that's the case, but I'll tell myself that.
Probably somewhere in the Kanye divorce it got brought up.
Yeah, exactly.
I love it, man. Well, hey, dude, thank you for coming on. I always enjoy our conversations in general, so I thought, hey, why don't we actually record one and feed the people?
Yeah, I love it. Thanks for having me. Excited to be here.
Of course. So, I'll start you with the slow ball here. I won't make it too hard for you.
Yeah.
And again, all these questions and our conversation is going to be around communication in general. What's a communication mistake you see smart leaders make that quietly kills trust with their team?
Yeah, I mean, I think something I've learned giving these talks all around the world,
Mr. Worldwide,
is I think folks think that sounding smart and talking over the heads of their customers or clients or people earns respect and gives you a certain amount of credibility and cachet. And I think it's actually the opposite. One of my sayings is it's easy to make something that's hard sound hard. It's hard to make it sound easy to understand. So I think folks would be better off really meeting their audience or whoever they're communicating with where they're at. And frankly, that's something that I've learned from years of speaking on stages, and I try to do all the time, which is take AI, which can get really heady, and I know colleagues of mine who go on stages and they present all the math and they lose their audience. And if you lose your audience, okay, they may come away thinking, wow, that guy's really smart, but they're not going to engage with your material. They're not really going to take much out of it. And they'll probably think you're a little bit of a schmuck for just speaking over their heads. So, for me, it's always, and I think conversely, speakers think I sound dumb if I kind of, doubt if I use words that everyone can understand, or I'm not, like, no, 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 no. I think you just sound like you're one of them. They connect with you, connect with the material, relate to you. So that's something that I've discovered is like, meet people where they are, speak their language, like do, and make, if you can be a translator from machine learning AI to kind of common language. I mean, that's literally my job. I consider myself to be a boundary spanner / translator, and that's kept me very busy and given me lots of exciting work and flown me all over the world.
Yeah, I love it. And it sounds like you're saying too, like, know the room, right? If you're in a room of all those guys if you're a neuroscientist and you're at a neuroscientist convention, you could probably nerd out and talk about some of the neuroscience-y stuff. But if you're talking to your patient, meet them where they're at.
Yeah, that's exactly. Look, I adjust my content and what I say for the audience. A month ago, Microsoft had me speak to chief data officers of various Berkshire Hathaway portfolio companies. That's an audience that's very technical. I can kind of decide, I can do that technical speak. I'm a former CTO and chief analytics and AI officer. I can speak their language. But if you put me in front of CEOs, I want to speak their language. They're not talking about math and machine learning. They want to know what creates value. How's this relevant to my business, right? How can I grow revenue, cut costs? So that's exactly, I mean, again, that's a long-winded way of saying what you did, which is know the audience, use their language, speak to them in a way that's going to resonate.
Yeah. It's funny. You made me think about it in this way that I don't think I've ever put this together. If you're talking about personal branding or marketing, are you familiar with Simon Sinek and his start with why kind of philosophy? So I've always used that with building a business, right? If people don't know the outcome they're going to get, if you don't share the feeling of what they're going to get from the thing you do, then they don't necessarily care. But applying that even to the way you talk to people, it's not about, like, you got to think of the outcome, right? Do you want them to come away from that conversation thinking, oh, he's so smart? Yeah. Or do you want them to come away from the conversation thinking, wow, there's actually so much I got from that, and he made me feel really good because of how the way he communicated. And I've never kind of put that together, that the outcome of the conversation really, you got to adjust how you talk based on how the outcome of that you want them to take away from that.
Yeah, I mean, I'll give you
a very
yeah, no, I got what you're saying. Let me give you a really concrete example of that. I'm a PhD economist. I spent years just digging into data, trying to understand what makes something high quality research, right? So if you're trying to look at the impact of AI on productivity, there's all sorts of research studies out here, and they have just different levels of rigor. And I thought early in my career, especially the speaking career, that here's what you do to prove a point to an audience is you cite research and you talk, because that's the gold standard. They've done these randomized controlled trials and they've held everything constant and they've done all these analyses. The opposite of that. And what I found was that did not resonate. Folks' eyes would glaze over. So the more you get in the methodology, you've lost everyone, except for the economists that actually care about that stuff. What is better than that is, and this is crazy, tell a story. So, and stories, and a story of a company that you worked with and they did X and they saw Y was the result. An economist would look at a story or a case study or a sample of convenience and be like, that's garbage. That doesn't show you anything. There's no rigor. Like, you haven't proven anything. You've just told a story. But people connect with stories. That's how our brains are wired, is like, we're a storytelling culture and we used to sit around campfires telling stories to each other. And you'll get the audience to really listen, especially if it's a personal story. And you're saying, hey, this is what I was a part of, and this is what we did, and this is what we learned. So to me, that was like, wait, telling a story, it doesn't have as much weight in my econometric brain, but it resonates with the audience. And so that was like a really profound switch that happened to me, is realizing, you know what, I'm going to tell stories. And like you said, I'm going to make them feel something. I'm going to get them to connect with the folks involved, the main characters and myself. They're going to remember that. They definitely won't remember the study that I cited that's far more rigorous.
Yeah. Yeah. Amazing points. Are you familiar with the book, The Go-Giver?
No, I don't know that one.
Or there's also, what's the Greatest Salesman in the World by Og Mandino. Anyways, really, really pivotal books for me, and The Dream Giver as well by Bruce Wilkinson. Similar titles, I guess. But it's all, every single book was told through a fictional story, and it was about sales principles and like entrepreneurship. I've never learned more from a business book than from those ones. I still know the names of the characters, or even if I forget the names, I know the roles and the archetypes and how I've modeled even my connector identity actually kind of stemmed from that book, The Go Giver, because there was this guy who was connecting all these entrepreneurs together, and it was kind of a big reveal at the end who he is. And I remember reading that book and thinking, I want to be that guy. I like that.
Oh,
So,
that's cool. That's cool. Here, I'll give you the Phoenix Project, which is a classic amongst data and tech folks. And it's a fictional company dealing with very classic issues that you run into as a CTO of a company, things like tech debt and, re-architecture and so on and so forth. You can learn about that, in textbooks and in very dry, content, or you can read this fictional story. And everyone knows the Phoenix Project in technical circles. So it's the same idea.
Cool.
It's like, we'd rather hear stories, right? That makes you feel things.
yeah. Plus, I'm Greek, so I love my mythology. So,
Oh,
okay.
cool. Nice.
Next question. What separates someone who is genuinely good at communicating from someone who is just confident, polished, and articulate, or are they also one and the same?
Yeah, I mean, at the end, I think it's really about what folks walk away with when they leave the talk or whether, whatever the engagement is or the conversation. And a lot of times you'll be on calls or you'll hear speakers that are very polished, but and they have all the rhythm and the cadence down, and they've got amazing visuals. And I always love to ask folks, well, what did you take away from that? Like, what were the nuggets? There's always like a couple nuggets that you learned or that struck you. And a lot of times those folks that are polished, it's a lot of fluff, right? Folks literally can't, they sat in on an hour of keynote or however long, and they can't really point to like, oh, that was really profound. That was something that stuck with me. And so I think that's the difference is like, if you can be on stage, it is a skill, by the way, and you can get better at it. And I'll talk about that, I'm sure, at some point, but it's one thing to just be really polished on stage, and it's another to leave the audience, walking away with like, oh, this is how it affects my life, or this is something that I'm going to take away and I'm going to change about whatever it is, how I think about AI or any other topic. So, but there's a lot of folks out there that can kind of talk the talk. And like, without like, it was, I always think about keynote speaking because that's like the world that I live in. But there's an expert out there who will remain nameless. He was put in touch with me. He's an expert on AI. He's never built AI. He's never really done it in companies, but he learned how to be a good speaker, and he learned how to just speak the language. And he eventually got booked for talks, and he grew that business and so on and so forth. And I thought that was really interesting, that you can be an expert and a keynote speaker on AI and not have any real world experience at all. You just read enough articles on LinkedIn that you're able to sound credible and smart about it. And unfortunately, that's the world we live in, where like, it's really, really hard to separate the real from the, fake social media kind of, bubble that we live in.
Right. Yeah. So. I don't deem the term expert super highly anymore, at least not automatically, right? It's, for me, it's like, okay, I want to see experience and reputation above just accreditation. I think I just posted something about that the other day because, I always tell the story too. I went to, when I got my first gym membership, there was a personal trainer who signed me up who was like 400 pounds. Yeah. And like, okay, you can sign me up to the gym. Somebody needs to do the paperwork. But then when he offered me a free couple personal training sessions, I was like, nah, I'm good. Thanks. God bless him. But I mean, bro, you could be certified personal training, PT, this, that. You don't have the results. You don't have, so. Anyways.
No,
people
completely
come
agree.
at me all the time for that, and there's a difference if you used to be a Mr. Olympia and now you're 72 and have a back injury, and okay, sure, but at least you did it at one point and you've trained other people to do it. So,
yeah. I think you need to have done it. I need to, we do a lot of fitness analogies in AI, like to really be an expert, especially a trainer, you need to have a really robust understanding of how the tools work. I've got a architecture and a rig that I'm very proud of, that frankly I show off during talks, because I'm one of the few guys that'll do live demos, because I want folks
Cool.
to see it, hear it, experience it.
Yeah.
You know?
And I like this transition. Let's stay in this lane for a minute about stage speaking versus interpersonal speaking.
Yeah.
I had one of my friends on, 𝗱𝗶𝘃𝗲. She's actually a TEDx organizer in North Carolina, one of the Carolinas. I always forget. I think she's North. And so we talked all about kind of the stage presence, and I think her lesson is even in the communication section. But what have you found to be like the distinction, the dichotomy between, Michael on stage, Michael, over dinner, and has one informed the other? Like, has you being on more stages actually changed the way you talk to people? And yeah, like I want to hear your thoughts about your speaking life versus interpersonal communication.
Yeah, it does definitely has influenced it. The speaking definitely influences my interpersonal communication and vice versa. I think if anything, one thing I've learned is slowing down. I tend to talk very fast, and then I'll stumble over words, or I'll use a lot of fillers. And I found that, especially when I'm getting to technical pieces, I'll slow down, I'll enunciate more. If anything, raising your voice, being louder isn't as effective as slowing down, right? And when you can enunciate and add those pauses in there, that's profound. If you look at really good comedians, they're actually not good at with their words, but the space in between the words. They're really good at their pacing. So that's something that I've learned, and it's just translated across all different forms of communication. The nice thing about, me at dinner, I think hopefully entertaining, engaging, someone you want to invite back, but there's an element that you don't have when you're on stage, which is that you get to take in information, and there's a two-way exchange. And so I think the best speakers in a, dinner or any sort of networking event are the best listeners. And so I think a lot of folks spend time, like, kind of wait for their turn to talk, like come up with an idea, and they're like, okay, wait. Okay, now go. And I really, really do try. For me, curiosity is one of the most valuable traits when it comes to engaging with folks and being a really good communicator, which is really trying to understand their story, what makes them tick. I always try, if I can, I'll try to understand someone's childhood, because that really dictates. You can learn a lot from how someone grew up, and where are they in their family, oldest, youngest, blah blah blah. So yeah, that's something that you can't do that during a talk, or at least you feel them out during a briefing. You feel them out. You meet people beforehand, but ask questions, listen to the answers, right? That curiosity, not to be fake and to pretend, but actual curiosity, I think helps you be a better communicator. And like we talked about at the beginning, like say things that they're likely to connect with, right? And really make sure that it feels like you're including them. It's being very inclusive versus talking at them.
I love all of that.
Thanks.
Even the way I do these episodes or whatever, the question I just asked, it's not written down, but we're just going through a natural flow. And I'm like, that's a good topic. Well, that's a good, and so I'm sure I always try to usually I don't get through half the questions I actually wrote, because the conversation will flow. My questions I write are just to keep me on track in case maybe my brain isn't super sharp or witty that day. But I'd actually love to stay on this topic for a minute, because this is something, especially I find most of my audience typically, I would say, is 25 to maybe 40. And, building their business, maybe a little bit younger in the entrepreneurial game, folks that are coming up. Hey, heck, if I got a bunch of Fortune 100 CEOs listening to this too, holler at me. Michael will tell you. No, I'm joking. But I do love this train of thought you had about slowing down your speech, being intentional with your words. I know for me, years ago, I heard a Jordan Peterson video, and I was always a fast kind of talker, but I would sometimes slur my words. I had a lot of and I just thought that's how it was. And I just couldn't be one of those polished people. Now, I got a long way to go, but I often hear compliments about how I'm a really good speaker, communicator. People like the way I phrase things or whatever. And that's taken me so many years of intentional time and effort. And there was a season where it was really weird and awkward, but I slowed down my speech and I let my brain catch up. And eventually, as I read more books and filled my mental Rolodex with stories and wisdom and knowledge, I could speak a little bit faster, and my brain kept up with my mouth, and then I could talk. and I could speak faster without a lot of the filler, although sometimes I still do, but that's when I'm tired. So and enough about me. I just find this topic really interesting because I think a lot of people feel like I did. Well, I just speak the way I do, my drawl, my slang, my my whatever, they just feel like that's fixed. So let's talk for a minute about intentionally changing your communication style and your pronunciations of things to become a better communicator, to get in circles that maybe you want to get in, or get a job you want to get, or whatever. How did you go through maybe becoming better at these and apply and intentionally doing activities to make yourself better?
Yeah, I mean, the first thing I would say is it is a skill. It can be learned, and make no bones, like it is one of the most valuable skills you can have. And that's especially true in an AI enabled world where more and more is going to be offloaded to machines. What's going to remain? Well, a lot of EQ and communication collaboration. When I started my career, I was given an opportunity by Singularity University. I gave a tryout. I had rehearsed it a bunch of times. They liked it enough. They put me in front of clients. I'm not exaggerating when I said I was terrible on the first talk. I gave a talk and they did feedback scores at the end. And I kind of didn't know what I was doing. And I remember seeing someone on the stage go on after me. And I was like, wow, that guy was terrible. And his score was slightly better than mine at the end of the talk. So I was like, that was very humbling. I was like, and I'm not trying to be a jerk. it was humbling. So here's the thing. Number one, you need to be willing to take feedback. You need to be willing to make adjustments. It's really hard when I think that first time was out of 5, I got a 3.6, which is like a C. I don't know. It's not good.
Yeah.
And that could have been it for me. But the good news is they gave comments along with those scores. And so I read, and I still do read every single comment. And some of them aren't as helpful as others. Some of them are just like, I didn't like the guy's tie or something silly. But more often than not, they're helpful. They say, hey, this story really resonated, or he really flew through the examples, or I didn't get enough real world examples. And you have to be able to take all that information and look for trends and patterns. But I found consistent patterns, which is, hey, he's not telling enough stories, speak from personal experience, slow down, don't try to cram all this information down my throat. And so those were lessons I learned. And my goal was with each talk, get that feedback, cram it, crank on it in my own kind of analytical brain, and then try to make those changes for the next. And what I saw was that consistently talk after talk after talk, I went from 3.6 to 3.7, 3.8, 3.9, eventually got to the point where I'm just consistently getting 4.9s and 5.0s. And so you can, and some of the things that I improved were what I mentioned to you, telling more stories. I thought speaking from personal experience was kind of narcissistic and solipsistic, like, hey, let me tell you about my experience. And I never did that. And I didn't realize people want to hear that. That's why they've booked you. That's why they put you on stage. And if anything, you connect more with someone's personal story when you understand where they're coming from. Speaking more slowly, more intentionally, I found that people will cram words into a sentence thinking more is better. But I think, Josh, what you had mentioned before is like often the best way to communicate is the shortest path from A to B. Right. There's a quote, I think it's Ernest Hemingway, that says, sorry, this letter is so long. I didn't have enough time to make it shorter. Right. And it's like, it actually takes craftsmanship to shorten the message. And so to practice it, I would do the same slides over and over again. I would practice like, what's the shortest path without learning the underlying meaning. And then the other thing I would say that I learned, and this was not from feedback scores, but from my own experience, was you got to engage folks and in many ways entertain them to be able to get the information across. I thought I was a lecturer because I've been taught in university and I got a PhD, and I thought, hey, my job is a university professor, and I would cram information in their brains and none of it stuck. When you add jokes in, I mentioned stories. When you make them laugh, I do a lot of self-deprecating jokes. So folks don't think that I'm full of myself. I'm just a normal dude doing normal things. When you do that, they engaged, you're getting their attention. And I could see, I have a weird sense of, I can feel the audience's energy, and it's very easy to just look, are they looking at their phones? That's a great indicator of whether they're engaged. But if you don't engage them first, none of the information, exactly. Wait a second, hold on. If you don't engage them, if you don't keep them sitting, leaning in and paying attention, it doesn't matter what you said. Like it's all lost. It's gone.
Yeah, speaking of entertainment, by the way, I always have a dance break on these things. So if you wouldn't
Ah,
mind, no, I'm just-
let's do it.
What you got, huh? You got nothing.
Love
I
it.
did. What did I do the other day? We had a new a meeting I had. There was a new guy, and I was like, all right, so we all had to do it. You know, we all got to do a break dance on camera, and the guy was
Oh,
like,
wow.
there's like 52 people here. It was a joke. Oh no, sorry,
Hello.
I didn't say that. There was the guy running the meeting. Anyways, I digress. Yeah, gold. Yeah, I had a few thoughts
Oh,
maybe to add, but I'm like, nah, I just be
yeah.
redundant. That was really good. Is there
Yeah.
any specific resources you'd recommend when it comes to books, joining something like Toastmasters, getting a sales job? Like if a guy, let's say a guy is 25 watching this, grew up in maybe an area where everyone around him just spoke slang, this, that, the other, and just has no good influences to really get better at communication, but knows they want to be like an entrepreneur and I want to focus on building my speech. What action steps can somebody take to really, besides reading books?
Yeah, I don't, I didn't really go the book route. I think Simon Sinek has some interesting things to say. If you look up Adam Grant, he tells stories about how he was really bad. He got evaluations like me. He was really bad at it, and it was a skill he decided he needed to work on. I think his TEDx or his TED Talk speaks to that. Find folks that you emulate that hold a room really well, and try to understand what is it that they're doing. Look at everything, not just the words that come out of their mouth, but the pacing, their gestures, their inflection, intonation. Try to get a sense of what it is you respect about them. And then the other thing is, honestly, there is no better way to improve the skill than just by practicing it. And that could mean you in front of a mirror. I find that there are lots of opportunities to do like meetups and free events. And a friend of mine just built up a big book of business just doing free events. His thing was like, it's like an apprenticeship. And he just said no, never. And he just went on every speaking engagement he could within reason. You're not going to fly across the country for something that's like, free or unless it makes sense. But anything in his area, he would go and he would give a talk, and he got better. And eventually he got good enough that someone said, you know what, let me pay you a few bucks to do this. It's almost like comedians. I still think it's very similar to being a stand-up comic. And initially, if you're a comic, you just work for time. You get 2 minutes, you get 5 minutes, you get 10 minutes. And eventually they start to say, okay, you're good enough. You can bring an audience. We're going to pay you. So there's no substitute. If you keep getting cuts at the plate and you keep improving, you will become a paid speaker if that's your goal. And at a minimum, you're going to get more comfortable in front of audiences. You're going to that stage fright, which I still feel every time they're giving me the introduction, becomes less and less. You get more and more comfortable, less stiff. It's something you keep getting up to the plate, like you're going to get better.
So I just had a thought based on this that I think is really a good tie-in to everything, even some of the work we do together. Because this whole community is based around building your personal brand. And obviously there's elements to that. You got to be good at communication, networking, marketing, sales. Like, you can build a brand, but if you don't know how to sell your product or service, if you don't know how to market, if you don't know how to. So I teach a lot of these things, and I bring in folks like yourself who are experts in those different areas. But okay, you want to become a communicator, you want to become a speaker on stages, you want to become whatever. There's the in-person aspect. And then now in this day and age, of course, there's the online aspect. So let's talk for a minute about who's Michael in this conversation, face-to-face, on stage. We've talked about who's Michael online, and how do you translate your personality into the way you talk in your DMs on LinkedIn? And how have you found that distinction of, are you the exact same person? Are you really short and concise on text? And how do you translate that so when someone goes from a DM to your Google Meets chat to your in-person, you're getting dinner with them, how do you maintain that cohesion of being the same person?
I mean, I agree. It varies by medium. I have generally found the more authentic I am and the more just honest I am to myself, the more folks can connect with me, and I think I build better relationships. Small example is me using, Michael is what many call me. That's what my dad calls me. But when I get to know you very quickly, it's Mike. And honestly, I've started introducing myself as House and like just telling people, even in work context, call me House. It's been a nickname I've had since I was like a kid.
You told me I have to call you Dr. Housman every time we
Yeah,
talk.
but that was just you, Josh. You're the only one that you have to stick to the formal. I know
Shoot.
exactly. Yeah, sometimes I'll correct people, but more if I met you at a conference, I'd likely say, "Hey, I'm House," and it's it's certainly not Dr. Housman. Folks can relate. You feel like like House is like, oh, that's like one of the guys. It's House. We want to have a beer with the guy.
Yeah.
Adam Grant cited some research where he said that cursing is not something that's like a no-no, and you need to be careful. Don't do it like in a formal setting in front of clients, but cursing actually brings you down to everyone else's level. It's been shown that it allows employees and audiences to really connect with you. So can be used in a really effective way. If you curse, it shows emotion, right? I'm so pissed that I'm going to say, I don't know, this is YouTube, so I won't curse, but that's, there might be kids.
We're allowed one cuss every 37 seconds.
Okay, perfect. I'll time it exactly. No, I got the pre-notes and you said, hey, there could be kids watching, so we'll move on. But yeah, we'll say that the more authentic you can be across text, email, the more you can connect with people, ask them about their situation. When I know that they went and visited their kids or visited grandkids or whatever it is, like work that in a conversation. People appreciate you remembering those details. And the last thing I'll say is, I'm still a fan of in-person. I put my body at constant, risk and pain and wear and tear because I'm on the road 50, 60 times a year going and giving talks. Most of them are in person. A few are webinars. I would put a lot less wear and tear on my body and probably make slightly less if I just said, I only do online and I only do this from the comfort of my own home. It doesn't have the same resonance as meeting someone in person, shaking their hand. You can feel their energy, especially in a big talk. I'll do Zooms with 20, 40, 50 people. They'll mute themselves and I can't hear what's going on. I can't feel the energy. And so, yeah, I go out of my way and I say, listen, let me do this in person. I'll cut you a deal because I know it's going to resonate and your audience, your participants are going to love it and I'm going to enjoy the experience more. So, yeah, I'm a big fan of in person. Get away from the computer screen if you can. Meet people in person. It's a totally different experience.
My pet peeve is not the video off. It's when someone just leaves.
Oh, yeah. Been there.
And there's just an empty seat for like 5 to 10 minutes. And you're like, are they okay? Did their dog just run out of the house? Like, what happened to this person? Because then you're just wondering. You're coming up with scenarios.
Yeah.
So.
My favorite is when someone thinks they muted themselves, but they accidentally or unmuted themselves. And then they start having, exactly. The meatloaf. And you start they're having a conversation. And then it takes a second to figure out who it is to mute them. But I've been on calls where and you just got to learn to roll with it and just keep going and know that it'll get fixed. But, people are kind of obnoxious in this day and age. Like we get a little obnoxious when it comes to Zooms and webinars. And we're like, hey, I don't really need to pay. I can start playing whatever, Minesweeper, or, Roblox, whatever it is I want to be doing in the background. So
you've worked with startups and Fortune 500 companies. What are the biggest communication differences you've noticed between fast-moving, smaller teams and large organizations? And which do you prefer?
Yeah, I prefer startups. I think that startups give you an opportunity, worry less about protocol. I think there's still culture and they try to make sure everyone's on the same page. But I love that the philosophy, move fast, break things. I really like that startups, you get to wear a lot of hats. You get as much responsibility as you can handle. You don't have to worry as much about politics. I've always thought politicking and working your way up the org chart, that just seems like such a waste of time. I mean, make friends just because it's a good thing to do and hopefully it greases the wheels. But for that to be an end unto itself, for me to think, hey, I need to befriend these 5 people in order to get a promotion or a raise or whatever it is that's just such a waste. It's empty calories, right? I'd rather, we all have a mission, now Josh, I think you spent some time in the military and it's at the end of the day, it's we should all have a goal that we're pulling towards. And the goal should not be, I want to move my way up the ranks so that I have more people to boss around. It's let's get in the same boat. Let's try to do something together and build something. So yeah, that's my preference tends to be startups. They can move quicker. Folks are less hung up on org chart and, standard operating procedures and documenting this and that and making sure everyone has to have a say in decisions. So it becomes very hard to do anything because you're worried.
Yeah.
Everyone's got their little fiefdoms and their turf that they're trying to guard.
It's funny actually, from military to any of the corporate type of things I've worked, and then working with entrepreneurs or I've worked with like SaaS startups and different, and the what's the word I'm looking for? Grandstanding, I guess, positional grandstanding that you see on that corporate side. And I think military is peak that. Like, just because I have one extra chevron, I get to say anything I want to you. And you and it's like, you can tell the ones that abuse that and the ones that just, they know you can't say anything to them because of, it's like, is that the kind of leader you want to be? A position? I know John Maxwell has like the 5 levels of leadership, and I forget the exact names for all of them, but one of them, I believe it's called like positional leadership. And I think the highest level was, the relational leader, something like that. Anyways, and it's having people respect and love you and want to follow you, not demanding people listen and follow you because of a positional title. And I've noticed that more on the entrepreneurial side. And I remember even early on when I was starting to network and connect with people and I had nothing to offer anybody. And I'm like, why would this person ever message me back? And then you realize that some successful folks it actually gives them value to be able to mentor and give back to someone who's younger. And that's why I encourage young guys. I'm like, hey, go on LinkedIn, man. LinkedIn connects you to, I'm connected to Dan Martell on LinkedIn. Now, have we ever talked? No, but he's my friend on LinkedIn. And if I message him every day, maybe at some point he'll just say hi. Cause, I know the guy's always talking to people and making videos and content. So, there's a level of, in this day and age, of just access that we've never had before. And so I like the idea of real leaders that are willing to communicate and treat everyone with, and obviously you get to an 𝗱𝗁𝗃𝗲 level. Yeah. You just physically can't keep up with the amount of messages, of course. But, let's talk about this for a second. And maybe we can kind of wrap on this main topic of a little bit of leadership mixed into communication here, because I know you've had a ton of positions, worked in some major companies, and of course you have your own stuff. As you scale and grow, talk to me from both sides. I'm 25 and I want to start networking, communicating with leaders that I respect and admire. And then on the flip side, in your position, been around the block, leadership, receiving that message from the 25-year-old, what would you recommend to that kid looking to start networking, communicating with higher level people? And what message would you give to other leaders on participating with that next generation and really helping them grow and scale?
Yeah, I mean, I think the first thing I would say is just take a shot or take a lot of shots. You'd be surprised. I think folks get intimidated. They're like, oh, that guy, Dan Martell, or, whoever it is, they won't want anything to do with me. They're getting spammed. Yeah, maybe, but you never know unless you try. And I've been pleasantly surprised by how often folks I know, or even strangers on the internet, are open to helping. Right. And there's Steve Jobs had a great story when he was a kid. He called up, Bill Hewlett was in the Yellow Pages. So he calls up Bill Hewlett of Hewlett Packard and said, hey, I'm an 11-year-old. I was hoping to mess around with some parts. Do you have spare parts? And this Bill Hewlett is like, yeah, sure. Come on over here, and gives him a bunch of free parts to mess around with. And it was an example of like, you don't know until you ask, and people want to be helpful, especially if you're younger, you're earlier in your career, if they see some part of themselves in you. So I would say sometimes just make the ask, as uncomfortable as it can be. And I will say, Josh, you're really good at putting it out there, like building rapport, but like, why not just ask? The worst you get is a no. Like, you seem pretty impervious to kind of rejection, failure, whatever it is. And that's a skill set in and of itself. And I'm not like, that's great. That's how we're here, is because you asked a few times and finally I was like, hey, let's double back on that thing that you mentioned before.
Yeah.
And, lo and behold. So like, I think that's one thing, is just being willing to do that. And then the other thing is, to the point before about listening curiosity, like everyone's got some problem they're trying to solve, or conversely, something they really jam on, and like something they really love, and they could talk endlessly about. And so either ask them, like, try to find out what's the pain point. Like, everyone's got a problem. If you can be the guy that solves that pain point, I think Gary Vaynerchuk has done some quotes about this. Like, if you can figure out what that is, now you're potentially a solve for them, and you'll probably get them to sit up and take notice. On the topic side, like, I remember it was someone who was reaching out to me and had an ask, and I get a lot of these, but happened to be a CrossFitter, which is something I'm very passionate about. Lo and behold, like, I was absolutely happy to hop on a call because he was speaking my language. I was like, oh my God, what's your Fran time? Like, blah, blah, blah. What's your clean and jerk? So that's the other thing. It's like, there's probably little passions that you can find about them if you do a little bit of digging, if you look up their LinkedIn, you really scrutinize the hobbies part. So yeah, try to either solve that pain point or show that you can connect to them in some way. Easier if you went to the same school or you were also a squash player, but there's probably something you could connect with them about if you do that research. And then, yeah, if you're later in your career and have done well, I think paying it forward is something that you have a responsibility to do. I try to mentor as best I can, even if I don't have the time to really invest in someone. I'll try to at least give them help them make an introduction. Like, I think I love Adam Grant's work. His first book was Give and Take, and the punchline is, givers, folks that are looking to receive more than they give, they don't do as well as, takers, they want to take more than they give. They don't do as well as givers, or they don't do as well as kind of sharers, folks that do both. And the ones that do the best are the givers, the ones that give selflessly of their time and resources and don't ask for anything in return. Those are the ones that across the board, study after study, do the best. So I try to subscribe to that. I try to do that as much as I can.
Yeah, I love it.
Cool.
Nothing to add. That was succinct, and you covered everything that I wanted you to, and more. Okay, don't tune out. I got one more dicey hot take question from the house. No, I'm adding the. Now it's too formal again. But
house.
Because I don't want everyone to scroll away, I am actually going to ask you another fun question. But tell everyone where they can find you, subscribe to you, connect with you. What's the best places to find Mr. House?
Yeah, really. So I have my personal website, michaelhousman.com. I have AIperformancelab.ai. That's where, if you sign up for our newsletter, we put out fun news on a weekly basis about AI, where it's headed. A lot of it distilled from my talks. So this is kind of the free version if you don't want to pay and be in the audience. In my LinkedIn, please feel free to connect, follow on LinkedIn. Again, name is Michael Housman. No E in the last name. People don't realize that, especially because I call myself House. And yeah, those are all ways to connect with me, and love hearing from folks, talking about AI as well as communication, leadership, and all sorts of different things.
Awesome. Well, first of all, thank you for joining me and recording this with me. Always, like I said in the intro, always enjoy talking to you, but I think this was super valuable, helpful to me. Heck, these are like mini mentorship sessions for me. I'm selfish. So I say it's content for the audience, but really, no, I'm joking. It's for both.
No, I love it. Yeah.
So my final, very controversial question. No, it's not that controversial. What is your biggest hot take when it comes to AI today? What's something that you think is, maybe it is controversial, but it's your opinion and you stand by it?
Yeah. I will say this. I think everyone, since ChatGPT burst on the stage, you have all these companies, you have all these CEOs, and the board is asking, we need an AI strategy. And then they think the first step is to go and hire a McKinsey and to get this massive strategy deck. And I'm a big fan of learning by doing. And frankly, I think of it as a fitness kind of, it's building those AI muscles. It's as if you said, hey, Josh, you need to get in shape. And your first thing is like, okay, I'm going to spend 5 months working with ChatGPT to work out the perfect workout fitness regimen and the right nutrition plan. And I'm going to dial that in before I touch a weight or, I do anything. It's like, okay, I mean, that is one approach, but I think that more important than the AI strategy is AI practice and treating it like you would getting in shape, building those muscles, spending time every day, working at it, learning by doing. I think that's ultimately how companies can climb up the ladder. And conveniently, AI Performance Lab, that's exactly what we do, which is we train, we help develop the mindset, we develop the skill set, we build out accountability, we build out a personal plan, but we get you moving up that ladder and not just thinking and strategizing. So that's kind of my big, it's especially for entrepreneurs. I run into a lot of CEOs and they're still noodling on where do we start? And I'm like, okay, we're a couple years into this journey. Like, just start somewhere, do something, you know?
Yeah. Go make a mess.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Yeah.
Cool. And just in case anybody was wondering, the big reveal, Mike is actually a 19-year-old girl from the Philippines using AI to seem like he is more credible. So this is actually an AI filter. No, I'm kidding.
Yeah. I've been asked that, not in live talks, but I'll do webinars and folks will say, is this your AI? And I'm like, not yet. I'm agentifying communication. There's a good chance if you're emailing me with me, an agent composed a draft of what you're seeing, but still me, you can ask me questions or hold up a newspaper from today. This is me for sure.
Yeah. It's getting there. There's definitely, even from when I started this Skool Community in December till now, simple things like image generation on ChatGPT. I would ask it to make these AI photos of my new members to post a fun little, hey, welcome, Brad. And I would have to give it 17 prompts and take 30 seconds to load each image. And I'm like, oh my God. So then I went to Gemini for a bit, and then Gemini kind of crapped the bed a bit. And now recently I decided to do that same thing again. So let me give ChatGPT a try. I haven't done any image gen for a while. Perfect the first time, high quality, gorgeous, took 5 seconds. And I was like, what? And then I gave Grok, I have Super Grok activated right now. I gave Grok a still of my, like a outro cover photo for some of my clips. And I said, animate this, make my head turn, make the leaves in the background look like they're, it's scary. I'll pop it up right here so you guys can see.
I'd love to see it.
Takes 10 seconds and now I have it's like 720p. It's not 1080, but still I have a video of my still image and it's incredible. And they just got started with video gen, I think a couple months ago with Grok. So
cool.
Anyway, maybe I'll have you back on. We'll just do a whole LLM session.
Let's do it. You got it.
Cool, man. Well, thank you again. You guys know where to find him. Links in the description. Any final thoughts, or that's pretty much it?
No, this is great. Thanks so much.
Awesome. All right. See you guys in the next one.